Hi, today I want to talk to you about the next steps following a strategic plan. You see, the easy part of any strategy process is the development stage. My name is Bruce Holland and I'm the founder of Virtual Group Business Consultants in Wellington, New Zealand. So what happens? You have a strategy session. Top managers have spent a couple of days wrestling with some of the really tough issues in the organisation, and thanks to some good facilitation, they're all committed to a new vision, a new value proposition, and end up with no more than 3 strategies in order to get them there. And believe it or not, the facilitator has managed to put it all on a 1-page summary. So the top guys are really satisfied. The trouble is, the middle and bottoms don't understand the vision. They don't understand the value proposition or the strategies, and they have absolutely no commitment to them. Obviously they have no commitment, they weren't even involved in it. So, and the real issue is that these are exactly the people who are going to have to implement the strategy. So what normally happens at this point? The wise tops sit around the table and they realise that they're going to have to do something. Someone says, we need to get them on board. The usual response is, well, let's do a roadshow. I'll go out and I'll talk to the troops in roadshow after roadshow, and we'll cover the whole country over the next 3 months. Others might think, well, perhaps we can just write a report and hope people will read it. But the really wise managers, they know that that's not going to be enough. It's going to take much more than a roadshow, because every single member will need to change. They're going to have to do something tomorrow differently than they've done in the past in order for the strategy to be achieved. Research shows that 76% of strategies fail, and therefore wise managers also know that they need to get everyone understanding it at a deep level and committed to it. And we need to involve both heads and hearts. I love this slide. The 14 inches from the head to the heart is a long journey. And it's like this iceberg that's in the chart. Most strategy processes put oodles of effort into the head side, the logic, the costs, the features, the conscious stuff. But really nothing changes until you've dealt with the heart, the emotion, the feelings, the trust, the security, all that unconscious stuff. So, although most processes put 85% into the conscious, I'm advocating you put 85% into the unconscious processes. You see, really in essence, you've got 2 options. We could do what most people do and put a small amount of effort into selecting the strategies, a large amount of effort into communicating them, going out with roadshows and so on, and an enormous amount of effort into trying to implement them, because it will be an enormous amount of. This chart is not drawn to scale. The black box on the top there is enormously big, because it's a very difficult thing to get implementation going unless people really own and are committed to the strategies. However, option 2, we could do what wise managers do and put a little bit of effort into a larger amount of effort into selecting the strategies by getting people who will be involved in implementing them involved at the start. I'm not saying go back and recreate the vision or recreate the strategies, but let them be part of deciding how they're going to be designed and the details of who's going to do it and when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen. I mean, that's a line management role anyway, not a tops. It's for bottoms and middles. Need to do that sort of thing. Almost no effort into communicating the strategies, because the people already know. They've been involved in working with them, and an enormously smaller amount of effort into implementing them, because everyone has ownership. The overall cost and effort of option 2 is much smaller than option 1. There's research study after research study that backs this proposal up. The one that I'm quoting here is just one of, as I say, thousands of them. But during the Second World War, the US government had a problem. It was how could they overcome the traditional American nutritional adversity to eating intestinal meats, guts, so there'd be more regular meat for the troops. So they brought along this social psychologist, a guy called Kurt Lewin, and he devised an ingenious program to get Americans essentially to persuade themselves to eat intestinal meat. He knew that it would be impossible to get them to do it through persuasion of any other way. So anyway, to prove this point, he got two groups. And the first group was lectured to on the advantages of eating intestinal meats and what it meant to the war effort. Recipes were designed and handed out, and the lectures finished with an enthusiastic testimonial by a fellow housewife about how her family just loved intestinal meats and the taste of it and how it was doing great for the troops. The second group, completely independent, second group spent their time in group discussion. Essentially, they were asked how they thought housewives just like them could be persuaded into eating intestinal meats. The discussion covered many of the same issues, but the result turned out to be far more effective because the people themselves came up with the ideas. It was their ideas, they had total commitment, and they wanted to make it happen because they were involved. The results, a mere 3% of people in the first group went on to feed their families intestinal meats on a continuing basis, whereas in the second one, 32% went on to feed their families intestinal meat on a continuing basis. I mean, the difference is really, really stark. The other thing that sometimes comes up is people will say, yeah, but what about confidentiality? If we get everyone involved, our competitors will steal our ideas, and then where the hell are we going to be? But, you know, it doesn't work that way. If they get to hear about the ideas, which is unlikely because people, if you trust them, are unlikely to abuse that trust. But even if they do, they'll be too late and they won't have any commitment or know-how to those strategies. And anyway, you don't have a lot of option because tops can't implement these strategies. It's the middles and the bottoms that are going to do it. Another case study that really appeals to me, back in 1989, I was the group strategic planning manager at the Bank of New Zealand. The bank had just fallen over. I mean, it had gone essentially bankrupt, except that it was a government-owned organisation. So the government actually put $350 million in to bail the bank out. This was the day that I joined, 8th of the 8th, 88. So 6 months after that, the bank was on its knees and really in trouble. A new chief executive, a guy called Lindsay Pine, came in, and the first thing I remember Lindsay saying was, it's not my bank, it's our bank. And if we're going to make this happen, we have to do it together. That really set the scene for about the next 3 years of my work. 6,500 staff and 350 branches were all involved in at least a day's effort, thinking about the sort of bank we had. Booz Allen were the advisors, I was the strategic planning manager. There were some really, really neat people involved in this process. The thing that I don't feel terribly proud about is that after a few months of going around the branches and getting discussions and conversations going about the sort of bank we wanted to create, we kept getting back pretty much the same answer. So I went back to Lindsay and I said, hey, you know, we're getting the same answers. We could short circuit this whole thing, save ourselves a lot of time and a lot of money. Thank God Lindsay had more wisdom than Bruce Holland, because he said, no, we're going to get every person in the bank to touch this strategy. And as a result, what all our research showed would be a 10-year program was completed in just 3 years. The BNZ went from a bailout situation where the government had put in $350 million, 1989. 3 years later it was sold for $1.5 billion to National Australia in 1992. I mean, if you ever wanted evidence that involvement and getting people enthusiastic about their organisation, then that's a great one. Actually, since then, I've discovered that a lot of research shows that when just 10% of the population hold an unshakable belief, their belief will always be adopted by the majority of society. And this is called the tipping point. At the tipping point, things can happen very, very quickly. This means that you probably won't need to involve 100% of people, although Lindsay's wisdom still has me thinking that it's got to be more than 10%. I would normally aim for at least 20%, and I'd always include the thought leaders and those other influential people. Wherever they are in the organisation, it's probably got very little to do with their place on the organisation tree. And the other thing I think is really important is that you make it an action learning type thing. So you involve people with movement and ask lots of questions and action methods and involve colour and music and positive psychology. Always start with what's working, not what's not working. Get them to tell stories. Tell stories yourself. Use art and just make the whole thing not a boring talk to sort of a thing, but something where people are involved in a deep discussion. So I hope next time you come out of your 2-day strategy and you've got feeling very satisfied with yourself, you don't go off and do a roadshow or write a report. It's not going to work, and the best way to do it is always what seems to be the longest way. It's always the shortest and the cheapest way. If you want to talk to me, I'm very happy. My email is bruce.holland@virtual.co.nz, or else you can give me a call. Hope you had a great time learning with me. Thanks.